Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, good morning and welcome to the Wednesday College Football and Basketball Blitz Sidelines. Rob Browne broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. And Mitch Davis is going to be joining us here in the first segment. Jimmy Hodge will be here with us shortly up in Lake Zurich, Illinois, and got a lot to talk about today. Second segment, we will be joined by Dan Mathews, 680 The Fan, over in Atlanta and Southern Sports Today. He's the executive producer of the Chuck Oliver Show. Top of hour number 2. Johnny Ballpark Franz checks in from Nashville, and we'll get his thoughts on the big picture of college football. There's always a lot on his mind. He is the king of the Heisman Trophy interviews. And Franz Beard, GatorAteMedia.com, will check in from down in the swamp, talking about the Gators playing pretty good football right now. And they got to close out the season. Hopefully, they're going to be able to close out and finish 8-4, go to a bowl game, be 9-4. That'd be a pretty good first year for Billy Napier. But we are here every Monday through Saturday on Sidelines, 2 hours each day. Listen live, www.sidelines.live. And, of course, go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park, if you miss it, or our website, www.sidelines.live. And Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City. Country music, 750 miles, a beautiful shoreline down there, and a lot of things going on in the college football world. And let's bring in Mitch Davis with us right now of the MitchDavisShow.com. And Mitch, you're a traveling man. You've been to a lot of games. Last weekend you were in Oxford, you were in Starkville, back to back, and want to hear what your adventure was like. I saw some great pictures you posted on social media and all from down there, but you're getting out there beating the pavement. Let's talk about the weekend.
Rob, thank you so much for having me on. It's always fun to come on and talk with you, and hopefully Jimmy can jump on here next few minutes while I'm on here. But yeah, the state of Mississippi was a buzz this weekend. I was in Oxford Friday for Feinbaum, and then also for Ole Miss basketball as they took on Florida Atlantic, and then I made the drive over to New Albany, stayed the night, woke up Saturday morning, and ended up myself in Starkville, Mississippi for the Georgia game. Heck of a weekend, a lot of fun. I thought Mississippi State played well. I thought Ole Miss played well. But Alabama and Georgia are just too good for those two programs at this current time.
Well, looking at it, I watched the Alabama game against Ole Miss first, and we had Yancey Porter on yesterday. Ole Miss, at the end of the game, Lane Kiffin will second guess himself, I guess, on that one. But you wonder why you change what was working, and that looks like it is what happened. You had a great crowd. It's a road game. Alabama coming off that loss at LSU. But the thing I kept trying to tell everybody was Alabama is not going to quit. They're going to come out swinging. Maybe if Arkansas could have beaten LSU, that really would have got them fired up. But they have a standard at Alabama, and they play up to that standard. Right now, they're number 8 in the college football playoff rankings. But hell, if LSU wins out, and they've got UAB Saturday, then they go to Texas A&M. They're going to Atlanta to represent the SEC West. But Ole Miss. Here's my thing on Ole Miss. They have a chance to still finish with back-to-back 10-win seasons. After what you saw Saturday, they got to go to Fayetteville. That's a tough place for them to play.
It really is, Rob. And the thing about the Arkansas-Ole Miss game is, for whatever reason, just like it is with Kentucky, Tennessee with Florida, you have that one opponent that you can never get over the hump with, and that is Ole Miss's Achilles heel is the University of Arkansas. Obviously, you look at Mississippi State, theirs is LSU. I mean, LSU always gives Mississippi State fits year in and year out, despite how bad LSU is or how good Mississippi State is. That LSU-Mississippi State game is always a darn good game. Same thing with Ole Miss and Arkansas. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Fayetteville. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if Ole Miss can bring it together, because I've been saying all year long that this is an Ole Miss team that has been fraudulent, that they have not been what people think they are. They're not as good as everybody says that they should be. That's because their defensive unit is not as strong as it should be, and they're also starting a true freshman quarterback in Jackson Dart, who is a great quarterback, will be a great quarterback here in the next 2 or 3 years, but also has a lot of inexperience right now on that roster.
Well, now you're hearing a lot of talk about next year. Lane Kiffin's got a really good team coming back on the roster. And Ole Miss's schedule, without a doubt, was front end. It was easy. It's back end loaded. Now they've got losses at LSU. That was bad. They were up 17-3 and get outscored 42-3 the rest of the game. Alabama, they're up on Alabama by 10 points. Can't hold the lead. Is it the defense? Is it play calling? Because that's what Lane Kiffin is known for, is being one of the best play callers around. And let's just put it out in the open. There are a lot of people other than Ole Miss people watching closely. You know, you see all the chatter out there in the social media world about Lane Kiffin to Auburn. I personally don't think he's going to Auburn. I think this is Jimmy Sexton 101. It's what he does. He markets his guys. He gets people raises. And bottom line, Lane Kiffin's going to get a raise either way. If he stays at Ole Miss, if he goes to Auburn, people can say, you know, well, he gets a guarantee. I hope Auburn doesn't do what Texas A&M did and other schools when you give away all your leverage. But Lane Kiffin, I think, is the best play caller in college football. But at the end of the game, Mitch, were you kind of shaking your head going, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about Lane Kiffin is he's just inexperienced. You know, he is a great play caller, but he doesn't have that experience that Nick Saban does. He doesn't have that experience that Kirby Smart does. And the only way you're going to learn is to make mistakes. And I think once you look at the overall body of work that Lane Kiffin's going to have in the next 4 to 5 years, that body of work, you're going to look back on his mistakes and go, hey, he's improved in this area. Hey, he's improved in this area. And that's the thing that I think coaches have to do, is they have to have short-term memory, and they have to learn from their mistakes. And, Rob, you mentioned Auburn. I want to say this on the record. I know that Auburn people, some will disagree. Cadillac Williams needs to be your next head coach. They have bought in for that man. There is nobody that loves Auburn more than Cadillac. He's proven that he can coach. Why not just remove the tag from him and stop parading him like a mascot, glorified mascot that Auburn's doing right now?
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more. Number one, there's no one that loves Auburn more. I would think he loves Auburn. I know that, but he's typical of Auburn people. They love that school, and I love Cadillac. But I wouldn't want to put someone out there that's only got 4 years experience coaching as a running backs coach. You need to be a coordinator. That's very dangerous. And Auburn people love Cadillac, and he is doing the right things right now. But there's so much involved in being a head coach. You don't get to really coach that much as one, but Cadillac, whoever the new coach is, definitely needs to be on that staff. He needs to be, make him a coordinator if you want to, or co-assistant head coach. But you've got to have more experience. We've seen it happen before when you rush a guy who's a position coach in too early anywhere. But what Cadillac's doing is saving Auburn from slipping into the abyss. There were more 4- and 5-star recruits on the sidelines at the 3 and 6 battle of the basement between A&M and Auburn than there were in Oxford for Ole Miss against Alabama. If you're going to get Auburn, you better get them right now, because you can just feel it behind the scenes stuff going on. They're going to get him a good coach. But I'm going to tell you, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, I don't see him leaving. He's got a hell of a situation there. They've got a lot of money. I mean, you can say Auburn's got money. Ole Miss has money too. They just finished, Mitch, a $2 billion, they're about to, $2 billion fundraising campaign. $1.5 billion for academics, $500 million for athletics. I think Ole Miss, I think Lane Kiffin loves being there. Only thing I wonder about is he's the king at Ole Miss. He answers, he runs the show. At Auburn, he's going to have to talk to some other people. And that's the thing that you go, well, he goes to Auburn. The boosters are going to, they're always going to be involved, but they're not bad people. They just love Auburn I don't think you
Some of
leave.
them are, Rob. Some of those people are terrible, terrible. Like the people who started the hellacious. Like I get it. Harsin was bad. We've been down that road.
Yeah.
But to start those rumors about that poor girl that he had on staff was complete and utter embarrassing. I mean, that was an embarrassment not only to Auburn University but to the SEC as well. So to say that some of those boosters are not bad people, that's pushing that envelope a little too far. That I would not like to, because some of those high up boosters that donate a lot of money, they only care about one thing. And Brian Harsin was never their guy. Alan Green went out, did an outside hire. He did not consult with those big time boosters. They were pissed off about that, and they tried to ruin the life of a young woman who is my age. She's 25 years old, a beautiful young lady, and they tried to ruin her life with hellacious rumors just because they were mad at Brian Harsin.
Well, I think the reason people were mad at Brian Harsin was the lack of effort in recruiting. Mitch, last year in the first week of January, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban each went to about 40 schools or whenever they could get out and recruit in that January period. Harsin went to 7. Okay. He sat on his butt and thought the kids would come to him. He'd been at Boise. He'd been at Texas for 2 years as an offensive coordinator with Mac Browne, 1 year at Arkansas State. Ask the people in Jonesboro, in the borough. Ask them about Brian Harsin, how much he had to do with the people there. I know people in Austin that covered him. They've told me Auburn should fire him with cause. They shouldn't pay him a $15.3 million buyout. Absolutely not. You look at recruiting. There are, of the top 33 players in the state of Alabama this year, 22 of them are 4 stars. 7 of them are 5 stars. You know how many of them Auburn has right now committed? 3. That's pathetic. That's called lack of effort. Harsin wasn't even showing up to high schools. Kids would be leaving on a Sunday afternoon with their families and want to see the head coach, which, is fairly normal. Like when you go to Thanksgiving to see your grandparents, you'd like to see your grandparents, and he wouldn't show up. He wasn't there. Let me tell you something. I know a little about Auburn, and the one thing Auburn sells is Auburn's a unique place. All these campuses are, but you got to get them on campus and you got to recruit. And that's where Lane Kiffin, you get a kid on that campus at Oxford, that's a beautiful place. And I know people love to rip Starkville. I love Starkville. I love these college towns. I love it because they're great. But I think Harsin got in trouble and all that other stuff. Man, I'm not even going to comment on that. Everybody has their theories, and that's none of my damn business. Okay, but as far as the recruiting, that's where he wasn't making the effort. And when you've got a year like this year in the state of Alabama, and you've got only 3, come on, you're getting out recruited in your own state by people like Clemson and Penn State. No excuse. Had to go. Now, Cadillac, you watch what happens in recruiting. I mean, it's real. And that's why Cadillac, he is a rock solid Auburn man. He's going to be a head coach one day. But you don't want to put someone in there with 4 games as an interim. He could be Auburn's Dabo. I wouldn't want to do that to him because how intense it is at these SEC schools.
When Penny Hardaway was hired at Memphis, I mean, he went through the first 2 years. First 2 years were rough. Last year it looked like it was getting rough. Then he turned around, got to the NCAA tournament. Now he's back to being the glory sign. There are pros and cons to it. I just don't, as an outsider, Rob, this is just me looking on the inside, looking out.
Yeah.
This is when you parade him around and you make him the face of your program, but you don't plan on hiring him full time. There's something about that, and I might be wrong, and I might be over exaggerating this, but there's something about that just doesn't sit with me that seems to be right. Because you're parading this man around and you're making him the face of your program, but then you're going to cut the ties with him, and you're going to be like, oh, you can just be a coordinator. Like, I don't know. There's something about that just doesn't sit right with me right now.
How many interim coaches out there get the head coaching job if they've only done 4 games?
I can name the ones who did and were actually successful.
Well, do you think Auburn's going to give a coach like Penny Hardaway, who didn't know what the compliance manual was about? They had to have a compliance officer sitting next to him to show him, and do you think he come on. I mean, there's if you think Auburn's going to give somebody 3 or 4 years to learn on the job, no. That's my point. Is that you want it once you've been a coordinator, and that being a position coach is one thing. Then being a coordinator is another. But I would prefer that he be a coordinator, offense coordinator, defense coordinator. Cadillac knows football, but he knows how to read people. And I can tell you, Auburn is not parading him around. You know, it's not like he's a mascot or anything like that. I mean, Auburn people absolutely love him. He had 90,000 people there. You know, atmosphere on campus last week for A&M game was big time electricity because Auburn people love him. You know, and I don't even know what his thoughts are on this stuff. I hadn't talked to him, but I think you got to be very, very careful in the world that we live in. You know, and there's going to be changes around Auburn. Coaches coming and going. Auburn's just got to get this one right. But I wouldn't want to say, hey, it's going to take 3 or 4 years. I just don't see people at Auburn having that kind of patience.
I think that's a pretty fair point, Rob. And, you know, you mentioned Starkville, by the way, earlier. Probably one of the last things I get to say, but I'm going to say this, and I know I'm piss a lot of people off at Ole Miss because I love Ole Miss and love the people there. Yeah. But Starkville is the best town in the state of Mississippi. I love Starkville. I love the people of Starkville, always so nice. Georgia fans were saying they had been to Oxford, they had been to Starkville, and Mississippi State people were 10 times nicer than the Ole Miss people. And I think Ole Miss people need to realize that, one, yeah, they're Ole Miss, yeah, they got the money, but they shouldn't.
Hold that thought, because I want to, if you get just a couple more minutes after the break, until 20 after, I want to hear the rest of your thoughts on this. Sidelines, Rob Browne, Mitch Davis, talking about Ole Miss, Starkville, Oxford, right after this.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Mitch Davis, Rob Browne. You know, Mitch, you got to say this. When you got an interim coach and a guy that's there, he's doing it. He's holding a program together, and he's getting a lot of help from a lot of people. But again, this is a question. I just got a text from John Paul Jones in Eutaw, Alabama, a listener to Sidelines. He said, this guy thinks that Auburn is not doing Cadillac right. I'm going to ask him something if he's an Ole Miss fan. And I'm reading this. If Auburn were to hire Lane Kiffin as a head football coach, would Ole Miss then hire Cadillac Williams as their next head coach?
No, they wouldn't, because he has no ties to Ole Miss. And, you know, I don't know if you're the friend as an Ole Miss fan or not, but everybody knows my thoughts on Ole Miss, and, you know, I'll finish my thoughts on later. But yeah, I don't think they would. You know, but here's the thing: Ole Miss has got to realize that where they belong in the SEC. They're not. Their attitude and their pompous ways have gotten way too advanced. I mean, what has Ole Miss done in the last 50 years? What has Ole Miss done in the last 50 years? Nothing. They've done absolutely nothing. And, you know, they've won a couple bowl games here and there, but Ole Miss is Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss is, you know, I mean, they are what they are. And they won a national championship in baseball, but guess who won it first in the state of Mississippi? The Mississippi State Bulldogs. If I were to pick a athletics department that I would say would have more success in the next 10 years as a whole, it's Mississippi State. Everything but football. Women's basketball, baseball's in a better place to succeed. Men's basketball, I mean, you go down the list, Mississippi State is an overall better school. And, you know, after spending a lot of time in both and spending a lot of time in the great state of Mississippi, I have come to the conclusion that Mississippi State fans are the nicest people. I love them. I love the Mississippi State people.
Yeah, they are, but Ole Miss has just won a national championship in baseball. I think they're in good shape there. Mississippi State won it the year before and didn't even make the playoffs, this year. But I will say this. Ole Miss, what have they done? I mean, they haven't won the SEC in about 60 years, right? But and they have not been to the SEC championship game yet. Okay, but I love the people down there. I love them in Oxford. I'm going to find good people no matter where I go. But top to bottom athletic department, you're right. Mississippi State's got a really good one. Now Auburn's got their AD. We'll see how that goes. But
I'm going to tell you, Mississippi State fans are not upset about losing John Cohen. I talked to a lot of them this weekend, and John Cohen's a great guy, and he's going to do a great job at Auburn. But Mississippi State fans just kind of got a bad taste in their mouth with Cohen and the way that he's handled everything at Mississippi State. They feel like he kind of held them back. They held him back in some of the coaching hires. Obviously, Mike Leach is still a big question mark. But I will say Cohen just made a home run hire with the basketball program at Chris Jans from New Mexico, who came here and came to Starkville and is really doing a wonderful job. And now Mississippi State, in my perspective, is probably going to be finishing the top 5 of the SEC men's basketball standings this season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But I don't know how John Cohen. I was hoping John Hartwell, who we had a lot of contact with, was going to be the AD at Auburn. But either way. Cohen's at Auburn, and I think Auburn people will rally around him. But as far as Cadillac goes, and next week when you're on, we'll talk about more stuff. But I can tell you this about Auburn people: he is loved by Auburn people. But he is not being paraded around like a mask. That's an absurdity. He is doing whatever he's got to do to save that program. He has a very bright future. He's a young guy, loves Auburn, and recruits relate to that. You can't get any more real than what he said. And I like what he said, Mitch, about individual team honors this week at a press conference. He said, we're not into that. He goes, there's too much individual stuff in football today with NIL and all that. He goes, we're focusing on the team. So you've got to have Cadillac part of your program. Then what you hope is that he stays at Auburn long enough, or if he goes away, if you want him back as a head coach, I believe you'll get him. But again, learning like with a family business, you've got to make, the first generation employs, second enjoys, and the third destroys. You got to make your kids work. And it's very common among my clients who have large businesses I've worked with in 31 plus years, send their kids out to totally unknown environments. Don't be a snowplow parent. Don't knock all the obstacles out of the way for your kids. Give them a shovel and say, get to work, boy. That's life. And that's how you got to be. So, you look at a guy like Cadillac who Auburn people love him. They're locking arms. It's what he did with Tuberville. They're pulling close together. He's going to be successful. And if Auburn doesn't keep him, the fans may tear the stadium down. But I think, when you look at anybody like Dabo Swinney, when he played at Alabama, but when he got that job at Clemson midway through the season, when they got rid of Tommy Bowden, it took him a while to get it going. And the world that we live in today with the transfer portal, and now here's what's going to happen. What's everybody going to say in year 2 now when you get a new coach, no matter how bad things were? They're going to say, well, look at Tennessee. They had 38 guys go in the portal. 4 of them let out of their letters of intent. 2 more medically retired. 44 guys left that team when Heupel came in. And 2 years later, they were number 1 a couple of weeks ago, and they're knocking on the door of the college football playoff. Mitch, that's just what it is. And all they ever ask for at Auburn and Alabama and Georgia, there's no pressure. Just win every game. That's all they want.
Well, it's a heck of a lot of pressure, Rob. And
no pressure.
But
it's like, what's your favorite bourbon?
Oh gosh, they can put me on the spot there. Maker's 46. I got a bottle of it staring at me right now. So Maker's 46.
Oh, don't start getting on it. But look, here's the thing. Every time you buy a bottle of that, what are the expectations?
It's gonna get me through another Kentucky football game. I'm just saying.
There you go. But Woodford Reserve, Knob Creek, there's an expectation when it's pouring out of greatness. And that's the thing about it. And I'm going to tell you, Oxford and Starkville, I mean, they're 72 miles apart, whatever. and they like to have that division, but overall, I spend a lot of time in Mississippi. I hunt down in the Delta a lot, in Lambert. They are phenomenal people. And there's difference in Ole Miss and State people. Look, I go down to Oxford. I got a lot of friends there. Got a lot of friends that are Mississippi State people. They're just some of the best people I've ever. And I'm not saying that. I'm not endorsing any.
There's a reason, Rob, that my fiance and I are applying for jobs and looking for homes to raise our family down there because my in-laws live in New Albany, Mississippi, and they love it there. It's a hell of a place to live, and the people on both sides, and I like to kid with the Ole Miss people, even though I cover Ole Miss because Ole Miss fans get a little upset, Mississippi State fans get a little upset, but at the end of the day, there is truly, Robin, I'm going to say this: there is no better state than the state of Mississippi. They are the most genuine people because they have had the odds stacked against them. And they realize how precious life is. And it really, that's why I have fallen in love with that state, fallen in love with the people. And, of course, I've got family and friends down there now, and it's just it's cool.
Well, I mean, being, I'm from Memphis. I'm like a Tennessean, an Arkansan, and a Mississippian. But I'm an Auburn grad. And Tate Davis, one of our listeners over in Charlotte, North Carolina, just texted me and reminded me Mississippi is a wonderful state. But you cannot beat Alabama, especially LA, as they say down there, lower Alabama. But
the two guys who have texted in have put me on the spot today. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel.
John, no. Listen, don't take it. They're just making observations. John Paul Jones and Tate Davis. But look, I know you got to get to a meeting. Got to ask you real quick. You look at SEC right now. Basketball, and you talked about Mississippi State could be in the top 5. And logically, people are going to say Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn with Bruce Pearl is a chance, Arkansas. So you put Mississippi State up in that crowd with Kentucky, Auburn, Tennessee, Arkansas. Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee. And you got Mississippi State like 5th or 6th?
I do, because I've watched Mississippi State.
You know basketball really well.
Yeah, well, I've been watching Mississippi State the last couple of games, and they're legit, man. I saw some stats. I don't have them pulled up right off the bat, but they're projected now with the way that they're scoring, the way their defense turnover ratios and all that. They're projected to finish the season like 24-6, 24-5, or however that ranks out. They've got a very good home schedule. They've got Kentucky at home. They only got to play Kentucky once. They've got Arkansas home and home. They've got Florida at home. Tennessee's in Starkville this year. They've got a very good home schedule. And as far as the rest of the SEC schedule goes, Kentucky fans and, myself included, who watched the game last night against Michigan State, and Kentucky fans are freaking out right now. And I'm having to tell them, hey, it's only November 16th.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes. And that's what Tom Izzo said last night is, hey, Kentucky's going to be okay, Kentucky fans. You guys got to chill out. And that's what I keep telling Kentucky fans right now. They got Gonzaga on Sunday, which should be a lot of fun.
Well, Kentucky, being a Kentucky basketball fan throughout your life is like waking up every morning being an heir or heiress to a billionaire fortune. Here's another text from one of our listeners, Clarence Beeks in Sylacauga, Alabama. He said, David Cutcliffe, we had him on yesterday, said, choose people, not places. He goes, that's what Mitch is also saying. So you're getting some credit from Clarence Beeks down in Sylacauga. By the way, you know what Sylacauga is famous for, don't you, Mitch?
Oh, Lord, what was it famous for?
Well, there's several things. I'll start with golly, Gomer Powell, Jim Neighbors in Sylacauga, Lee Perryman, our good friend who owns Radio Alabama Group, and Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin, carries Sidelines on Lake Martin for us. And it is known for the home of Maury Gaston, Van Plexico, and something else amazing. Doug Layton, former color analyst on the Alabama Football Network, but it is the marble capital of the world.
Huh.
And they have a beauty contest down there, Miss Marble. By God. But but look, Mitch, I know you got to get going, but I got to say this. I'm looking forward to talking basketball with you because you are Basketball Jones. I mean, in the last 4 years, you've been to 200 and how many games?
Oh gosh, total with football included, it's in baseball. It's close to 400 now. I think we celebrated 300 last year, and obviously I went to Omaha. I've been to I've been to Hoover. I'm actually Rob. So my bachelor trip is going to be to the SEC men's basketball tournament because my entire friend group, all 9 of us, we've got so much split allegiances. We've got State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky. That's all in my wedding party. And my dad, who's playing my best man, is playing my bachelor party. Goes, Mitch, why don't you just have it the SEC tournament? You guys don't have to go into every game, but you'll be all there together celebrating the SEC, celebrating your marriage, celebrating your freedom, and all that. So we're going to do it in Nashville for the SEC men's battle. I'm sure we'll be doing radio shows because 4 or 5 of us are in sports media, and it's going to be a lot of fun that weekend. But, Rob, I really, really appreciate you having me on.
Hey, look, absolutely love having you on, man. And this is fun, man. You've been lighting up the phone like a Christmas tree.
Hey, I'm bringing a cowbell. I'm bringing a cowbell next week. I'll have a cowbell. It's hanging above me right now, and I will ring that damn thing next week.
Well, let me tell you what about you, Mitch. You're a very gregarious guy. You like people, and I like what David Cutcliffe said and what Clarence Beeks just said. You choose people. I can go to any campus in the SEC, and I'm going to find people that I like. I got a lot of Alabama friends. I got a lot of Tennessee friends. I got a lot of LSU friends. I can't go to Mass at St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis without hearing a lot of Go Tigers. And I mean, anyone from Louisiana that transfers to Memphis for business or whatever ends up going to church with me. But I'll tell you what, tell people how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on next week.
Yeah, themitchdavisshow.com. I'm going to be talking to Gary Stokin tomorrow of the Peach Bowl. Really looking forward to that. He's a really great guy. Hopefully I get down to the Peach Bowl this year. And also, Rob, I'm going to be dropping an article here in the next 3 to 4 hours that you're going to really like, talking about the core values of the Southeastern Conference and faith, family, and football. You know, and I was reminded of that this weekend as I was in Stark watching the patriotic tributes and the honoring of veterans. And I got chills, and I decided to write an article. I've been writing it for the last 2 days, and it's over 600 words and should be a lot of fun. And I know 600 words, some people's a lot, but for me to put my thoughts in that is pretty cool.
Well, remember what we talked about, you and Jimmy and I, that time. Don't limit yourself to 600 or 700 words. If it takes 3,000 or 4,000 to get the point across, true grit journalism, Mitch. And that's, I mean, do it, because I loved your piece. I read it about your trip to Starkville. And again, it's the people everywhere you go. And you talk about Military Appreciation Day, and you saw down at Auburn and Texas A&M, you know, you talk about 2 fan bases that are as patriotic as it gets, but that's what we love. You're right. Nothing better. Mitch, have a great week. Have a great day at work, and we'll see you soon. And anytime you need me on your show, I'm ready to roll.
I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great day. Look forward to chatting with you soon.
All right. Thanks so much. Mitch Davis, man, I'm going to tell you what, he over 400 football, basketball, and baseball games over the last 4 years. That's a lot of ticket stubs, man. That is a lot. I mean, my goodness, you talked about getting out. And Dan Mathews is going to join us here in just a moment. Jimmy Hodge has checked in, and Jimmy, we thought that it was kind of like when I remember as a young boy watching when the first man was on the moon. One small step for man, one giant step for mankind. You didn't know where it was, and I was like, where's Jimmy out there? Somewhere in the hemisphere, in the galaxy. Technical problems. It is every time we every time you do a live show, which we do, there's always, I get all excited like JoJo the circus boy, banging into stuff, knocking wires loose and ever like that. And Audrey turns, and that metal plate in her head messes up the signal. But man, I'm gonna tell you right now, Dan Mathews is gonna be on here in just a minute. But Jimmy, looking at college football playoff rankings came out last night. Before Dan comes on, your takeaway.
Well, it was just the same. No major changes as far as the top 4 goes. In fact, no changes at all. It just comes down to the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. Whoever wins that one will most likely be in. I just don't see the Western Division opponent providing much of a fight. And then the loser of that matchup will be out because the strength of schedule is just going to kill them. I mean, Ohio State's played one ranked team up to this point, and Penn State. And that Penn State team, again, made that Ohio State team defensively look ordinary. And
Jimmy, hold those thoughts at the stopwatch. I'm looking. We're going to take a break, and I want you to come back because there's a lot of stuff out there, SEC bias, and I'm going, really? Big Ten bias. Look at the strength of schedule for Ohio State and Michigan in the top 4. We'll talk more right after this.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BB King for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge on this Wednesday college football and basketball blitz. And Jimmy, you were making some great points before we went into the break about the college football playoff rankings, top 4, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and the TCU Horned Frogs. Big Ten bias, that's what I see. Envy, that's what I see. And Jimmy, you look at these records, and I found this last night. Cole Kubelik, give him credit. Love that guy. Overall opponent records. Ready for this? Georgia, 62-38. LSU, 61-39. Tennessee, 60-41. Clemson, 57-43. North Carolina, 53-41. The TCU Horned Frogs, 52-48. Now, Ohio State, 49-52. Southern Cal, 46-54. And Michigan, 45-57. Jimmy?
Yeah, that more or less tells the story. I saw a number last week that had Ohio State's strength of schedule out of the 131 FBS teams at, I think, 66, and I had no idea how it was that high. And same thing with Michigan. I mean, it's just baffling. There's just this perception about, I think, the Big Ten for so long, because until the mid-'70s, they only allowed their champion to go to a bowl game, and that was the Rose Bowl, of course. So they were able to kind of protect their league, against any arguments by other conferences. And since that time, that every team in the league that qualified could go to a bowl game. In the last 50 years, I think there are only maybe 2 teams, maybe 3 that have a winning record in bowl games. I think maybe it's 2. And for a long time, Ohio State was not one of those teams.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, we all know they have 70% of the TV sets that are within their geographical footprint. That's a big factor. And all the networks love them. And I have no doubt that a huge majority of those network executives grew up following those teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, look, let's do this. Let's switch gears, head over to Atlanta. Dan Mathews, executive producer, Southern Sports Today, Chuck Oliver Show, airs live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, talking college football nonstop. And Dan, Houston native, Astros World Series champion. He's excited. LSU Tiger, knows his sports. He's a Swiss Army knife, man, can go any direction. Dan, your takeaway from last weekend's college football action, and as Tony Barnhart said on the show yesterday, Tennessee fans are pulling hard for Georgia now, and he laid out a case for it. Would you agree? I agree with Tony.
Well, you broke up there a little bit. I'm sorry, Rob, and I'm sorry for being late. But
that's okay.
What was the last part of that?
We're just talking about Tony Barnhart was on the show with us yesterday saying,
Right.
Tennessee fans are going to be, in a case where they're going to be wanting to be pulling hard for Georgia to win. And I'm like, yeah, that is as much as they wanted to beat them. That's where we are right now. But man, it is a competitive race going into this weekend and the playoff rankings, which means, hey, we can't get the 12 fast enough.
Yeah, I think right now, it's still going to be pretty easy to figure out who the final four teams are. But when it comes to, Georgia with Tennessee, I can understand that. For whatever reason, Tennessee fans feel like that they were kind of slighted in that game, which I don't really understand. I was there. I saw it. It was not as close as the score indicated. It was Georgia's defense putting together a hell of a game plan and executing said game plan. And it was also, too, an offense that I think probably, Tennessee fans want to say, well, if it didn't rain, we'd be able to do our offense. Based off what? Like based off what? You couldn't protect your quarterback. You had a couple of turnovers, and the passing game never really got going. So I don't understand why you're saying that. If anything, I think that Georgia's offense would have been able to have their way in the game because they were able to run the ball. They were able to complete downfield throws, and they were almost able to score at will. Kirby Smart pretty much, made the decision to back off offensively because of the rain.
Yeah. And
also, too, that they turned the football over a couple of times. But, I understand wanting another crack because you feel good about your team. I still think that Georgia would be favored in said game, and I think that if Georgia played anywhere close to the way they played in the first game, I think they win again.
Yeah, and, the stuff about the rain, you were there. It rained on both teams. I never, ever give any quarter to that. Never, because it's silly. All right, let's look at LSU right now. Go back to game one, Florida State. Golly, Brian Kelly now, everybody will tell you he'd have gone for two if he knew what he knew then, what he knows now. But he didn't. Now, here they are at 8-2. They've got UAB and at Texas A&M. They went out. They are going to Atlanta, and a two-loss team. You remember in 2017, that Auburn team was 10-2. They lost on the road at Clemson, 14-6 early. Jarrett Stidham was sacked 11 times. And then they lost that LSU 27-23, one of the biggest meltdowns I've ever seen from Auburn after leading 17-20-0. Now, LSU, they win the SEC championship. You're not keeping them out of the playoffs. No way, no how.
I wouldn't think so. Last night's rankings pretty much told me that, with them being at number 6. I think that Tennessee is going to finish out the season with a couple of wins, so they'll probably stay there at number 5. But then the question becomes, all right, well, is it Tennessee or is it Georgia that's left out? I think if you get to the SEC championship game and Georgia loses that SEC championship game, I'd have a really tough time keeping them out when the head-to-head they beat Tennessee.
Exactly.
So, I think that probably then that brings up Tennessee fans, which I can understand their argument, saying, whoa here. Like, I get it that they're the SEC champion, but something's got to be said for what we did to them earlier on in the season. And I would be there for that argument, because you have one loss in this season, and I get it that they didn't get to Atlanta, but at the same time, though, too, I mean, one loss to the defending national champion, and, of course, this is all speculative if they lost that game to LSU, saying, they've got one loss and these guys got two. I mean, I just, I get where the committee is placing them right now. I just think that the committee would probably put themselves in a bad spot if they did that.
Yeah.
And I get it too. I mean, you got the one loss earlier on in the season to a team that's probably going to finish 9-3 in Florida State. So I mean, it's not looking as bad now, but that Saturday in early October or late November, September. I guess the coffee hadn't kicked in yet, but you get my point.
Yeah.
It's got to count for something. So I don't know. I mean, I understand where the committee had them last night. I mean, even to a certain point, you could say the committee's still kind of leaving the door open a little bit for Alabama. I mean, a lot has to happen for Alabama to get a chance. I mean, I'm talking everybody loses. Everybody loses. But, I mean, for LSU, I think if you got a one-loss Tennessee, hell, if you got a one-loss Michigan or Ohio State, I think they've got a better argument than LSU does. But, I guess if the committee wants to roll down that road, then they can answer the questions. I don't have to.
Yeah, this is the way I look at it. If LSU were to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, you still take Georgia over Tennessee because of the head-to-head. That accounts for a lot. You got to. Now, another quick question. Big Ten bias. It's all out there in Twitter and everywhere. They're SEC bias. And I'm going, really? You got Michigan and Ohio State at 2-3. Both of them, their opponents' records are well below 500. And Georgia's at the top of the list. Their opponents' records are better than anybody. How can you say that? I think the Big Ten is in there strictly because, as Jimmy referenced right before you came on, 70% of the TV sets in the country are in their geographical footprint.
Well, I will say this. I mean, having seen Ohio State play, that's a legit team. They can run the ball. They are so much improved on defense with Jim Knowles. And also, too, I mean, we know what their passing game is, and we haven't gotten to see Jackson Smith and Jigba for much of the season. But while he's been absent, Marvin Harrison II has really stepped up for them. Emeka Egbuka has been a really strong part of that passing game. Same deal with Julian Fleming. And then even to some degree, their tight end, Cade Stover, is somebody that I think has probably played himself into a chance to be drafted by an NFL team next year. They're much more stout on the offensive line than they have been in recent years. They kind of, in terms of their offensive line and running back makeup, really remind you of the Ohio State teams of old. But the explosive passing game puts them above those teams, at least explosive-wise, offensively. I think that game for them, coming up next week, them to Michigan, they're both going to be undefeated, even though, I mean, they've got pretty decent tests this weekend. Ohio State having to take on Maryland, and then, of course, Michigan trying to avoid a Brett Bielema upset from Illinois to get to that game next week. I expect them both to be 2-3, and I expect the winner of that to be rubber stamped to get to the SEC or to the Big 12 championship game. I mean, in terms of the SEC bias, I think it's more or less it's just a wish. It's just trying to Danny Cannells of the world and all these people trying to throw the ACC in there. I mean, I had a guy a few years ago at a bar try to tell me, well, the ACC is better than the SEC now, and I held my hand up. I said, I'm not going to let you have that. Like that's not even remotely true. I mean, tell me who after Clemson in the ACC would really be a threat in the SEC. Tell me who, because the answer is nobody. I mean, I understand now you got North Carolina, who's probably going to pick up their 10th win of the season this year. Maybe they would be at least competitive this year. But, I mean, and you got Florida State as well, which I'm sure the FSU fans will say, wait a minute, you just mentioned us beating LSU. Okay, fine. You're going to be a 9-win team. You're a middle-of-the-road team in terms of being good teams. So, I mean, if you want to have the argument about the SEC is top-heavy, okay, fine, then at least we can have that conversation. But in terms of, it's an overrated league, I don't buy that. I mean, we're talking about 4 teams within the top 10 right now. That's 40% of your field that have at least a decent chance of making the college football playoff. I can't ride with you on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the 4 SEC teams in the top 10, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, and Alabama, they would, all 4 of them, I feel like, well, 2 of them would beat Ohio State soundly. The other 2, it'd be a full 60. But the Big Ten SEC argument is strictly because of TV sets. What I would love to see a regular season home and home like they do with the Big 12 SEC in basketball, Dan. Think we can ever get to that point? I know we just got a couple of minutes before you got to get going, but I think that would be a lot of fun and it would solve a lot of arguments.
Well, the College Football Playoff Committee has basically told you your schedule matters. So I think we have a better chance of seeing more of those. I mean, I think right now there's a little bit of a holding pattern just because of, when does Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC? When does USC and UCLA join the Big Ten? And then I think once that happens, then you could probably start seeing those a little bit more because, I mean, you've got a scenario where we've seen it for years. In-stadium attendance has been declining because the fan is telling you now, dude, I'm not going to make a whole day's effort to go see Georgia play against Arkansas State. Like, it's just not going to happen. If I'm a guy with a family in Atlanta, I'll probably give those tickets away or sell them or do something because it's a hour and a half to get there, set up for tailgate, break down tailgate, go back home. And if it's a noon game, you're getting home at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. That's just not worth it to me. Whereas if it's Ohio State and Georgia, then yeah, I'm in the building. If it's Georgia and Penn State, then sure, I'm there. I mean, people want to see good matchups. I mean, I had a buddy of mine, and I know that we're not under the FCC auspices, but he had a different way of terming it. I'll clean it up a little bit, where he said nobody wants to watch crappy football.
Yeah,
and that's the case. Is I think that probably once we get things settled, you'll see more of those games. I don't know if we'll ever get to a signed contract where it's, hey, we're going to have the SEC Big Ten Challenge here. But I think with these 2 forming up super conferences, that probably you will see more head-to-heads between these 2 because they'll be the 2 that are fighting for supremacy in college football.
Yeah. Dan, just a couple of more minutes. The Pac-12, Southern Cal trying to make a case. Oregon, they're out of it. They lost at Washington the other day. UCLA, is the Pac-12 better this year? And what's unfortunate for them is Southern Cal and UCLA announced before the season they're leaving.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they're improved. So I guess that would mean that they're better. I mean, USC being a 1-loss team, they seem like they're at least on the right path to getting back to being the program that you need to be in order to win these titles. I think the biggest thing for the Pac-12 has been the best players out of their backyard are going away.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think Keely Ringo is a Phoenix area guy, but
he is.
Darnell, Georgia. He's a Nevada guy. Brock Bowers from Napa, California. He's a California guy.
Yeah.
You've seen Bryce Young leave California, Mater Dei High School, and go play at Alabama. You kind of get my point here.
Yeah.
That's the charge for Dan Lanning if he decides to stay, and for Lincoln Riley and for Chip Kelly, and for all of these programs on the West Coast is. I've said it for a long time. They've got to do a better job of keeping their homegrown talent there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any doubt in any coincidence that Texas and Texas A&M, just to kind of bring it closer to us, that they've dipped over the last few years because You got Nick Saban going into high schools in the Houston and Dallas area.
Yeah, Dan, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a 1-minute break. Want to come back? One more question. Let people know how they can follow you after this quick commercial break. Great stuff with Dan Mathews, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne on Wednesdays, Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Dan Mathews, I know you got to get going after this, but let people know what y'all are going to be talking about today on Southern Sports Today, you and Chuck Oliver, and how they can follow you. And always really appreciate you taking time to join us and look forward to the next visit.
Yeah, you can follow us, Chuck Oliver Show on Twitter, at Chuck Oliver Show. Follow me at Dan Mathews ATL. We're going to be talking with Heath Klein of 107.5 The Game there in Columbia, South Carolina. Talk some Gamecocks as they try to play spoiler this weekend for Tennessee. We'll see if they're up to the task. Will Vandervoort's going to be talking some Clemson Tigers. Looking forward to that. Also going to get into a little bit of the Lane Kiffin conversation with a good guest that we'll let you know about a little bit later on. And then also, too, we hadn't had a chance to talk Tulane Green Wave. Maddie Hudak, who is part of the Green Wave radio broadcast on the sidelines there. She's going to come on and talk what Willie Fritz has got going on there in uptown New Orleans. As we know, our good buddy Frank Duffy is also keeping an eye on what the Green Wave are doing there. So, jam-packed show this time of year. That's what you expect. And, we'll do it again next week.
All right. How do they follow you on Twitter?
At Dan Mathews ATL. It's 1T in Mathews.
All right. Got it. Dan, have a great show today. We'll be listening. And Frank was a ball boy when he was a kid for Tulane, so he keeps up with the Green Wave. But that is a great story. But have a great show, man.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, you too. Jimmy, looking at that Tulane story right there, what does that tell you about no matter where you are, if you get the right people there, what you're capable of doing in football? And Johnny, okay, go ahead.
Well, when Tommy Bowden was at Tulane, they had that undefeated season in 1998, and it got him the Clemson job. But it's weird that some coaches are able to have a miraculous season at a place like Tulane, where the academic entrance requirements are more difficult than at a lot of other places. But then Tommy goes to Clemson, and he had some success there, but not the type of success that a lot of their alumni expected in a league where they should be in the top 2 or 3 every year. And he got replaced in mid-season after an opening game national television disaster against Alabama, and it just went downhill, where Clemson started the year in the top 5, and they brought in Dabo against the wishes of many Clemson alumni, because he had never been a coordinator, and the rest is history. So it's just weird how some guys that can win at a place you don't think anybody could win, but then they go to a place with all the ingredients to win national championships, and they don't get it done.
Brian Harsin. Anyway, Johnny Ballpark Franks, man, check into this one right now. Dan Mathews over in Atlanta was talking to Jimmy and me right before you came on, saying, hey, Florida State's likely going to end up 9-3. Let's get your update on the Noles. What's going on down there with Chief Osceola, Renegade, and everybody at Doak S. Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee, Florida. Gene Deckerhoff here. Johnny Ballpark Franks, fifth-year senior, back at quarterback, leading us to the ACC title.
You know what I love about college football, especially this year, is the fact that, year in and year out, you're worrying about which 4 teams are going to make the college football playoffs. Is it Alabama? Is it Georgia, Ohio State, or Michigan? How about the stories? You brought up the Tulane story. Amazing story there. The job that Florida State is doing. I mean, the last 2 weeks on the road inside the ACC, they beat the Hurricanes of Miami 45-3, the biggest road win ever in that series. And then they, this past weekend, a 38-3 victory at Syracuse. These are the kind of stories, or that excitement in Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday night with Auburn beating Texas A&M. I mean, if you didn't know the ramifications of that game, if you had not realized that Auburn had not won a football game since the end of September, so you've been away, you've been asleep for, several months, and you wake up and you see that atmosphere, it would be like Auburn celebrating a chance to play for a national title. That was the enthusiasm there. That's the enthusiasm as far as with the fan base for Florida State, and obviously the excitement for Tulane as well. This is what college football is all about.
No doubt. I mean, and I woke up Sunday morning, picked up my cleanest dirty shirt. There ain't enough alcohol out there, to get over the losses, 5 in a row for Auburn. But you're right. You get somebody in there that loves it, who breathes it, who is passionate, and Cadillac is that man. That's why he's always been loved by the Auburn people. He stayed a full 4 years there, and he's part of some special times. But you're right. That's the excitement that we love so much. And Jimmy, what Johnny just said was like an opening statement, an argument in front of the court, the highest court in the land, that being the Sidelines panel here. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's been a crazy college football season. Johnny, I'm wondering if you have been observing with amusement over these last 3 or 4 weeks when they were talking about teams moving up in the college football playoff rankings and being considered for one of those 4 spots. And it's funny. Nobody seemed to be concerned at all about Oregon losing a game 49-3. And as long as they kept winning, everything was fine, But then
Forget
other
about
teams, you're Alabama and you lose 2 games on the last play of the game against top 5 opponents. And, hey, they might as well just drop their program, And but I've got to say that it's just amazing, depending on what the team is, how they are judged and what the requirements are for them, from a performance standpoint. And then being in the SEC, I would just like to see, and I've said it several times this year, I'd love to have seen Ohio State play in the SEC this season and see how many of those road games that Alabama visited, just how many of those that they would come on top in.
You bring up some good points, Jimmy. And the other thing about it, too, and I know why it's the case. I mean, since the start of 2008, I don't think we've ever gone through a period of time with one football program that's experienced what Alabama has gone through. And what I mean by that is when they took the field Saturday in that ball game against Ole Miss, it was only the 4th time in 174 regular season games going back to the start of 2008. It was only the 4th time Alabama has taken the field without national championship implications on the line. I mean, the only other 3 times was after Alabama lost at LSU back in 2010. So those last 3 regular season games, including Cam Newton in the Iron Bowl and that come from behind victory, those 3 and Saturday against Ole Miss, 170 out of 174 regular season games, Alabama has taken the field with a national championship on the line. And I think that is why, too, where, there's a definitely a large percentage of Alabama fans not celebrating a victory against Ole Miss on Saturday. It was almost like a sense of relief that they didn't lose. And then you weigh that to the excitement, as I brought up earlier, the excitement what Auburn had done, the excitement what Florida State has done this year, and especially the last 2 weeks. I'd rather have the feeling of being excited about winning a regular season game than just the fact of, relief that you didn't lose, if you know what I mean.
Well, if people would listen to what Nick Saban says, he's like, enjoy the regular season. Everybody's talking about the playoff, and we know what's on ESPN and all these other networks. Who's in? It's as obnoxious as bubble teams. Who the good teams are. But that's what they got to do. I'll say this: Alabama, interesting, and I'm telling you, this is a different Alabama team though. They're scoring. They're not scoring in the games against LSU and these other big games. They're not scoring 45 and 50 points. Tennessee, they did, right. But the Ole Miss game, they get 30 points. LSU, what is it, 30? And there's about 14 points that aren't there in those big games. Year after year of losing 6 and 7 assistants has finally caught up, I think, with Nick Saban. And I talked to a very wise Alabama friend of mine yesterday, and he makes a great series of points. And one of them is, you got too many people that aren't there that know how it used to be done. And this started about 4 years ago. And in spite of all of that, you've got Bryce Young, you had Tua, you've got these quarterbacks that are generational talents. Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts had success, but Tua, Mac Jones, and now you've got Bryce Young that are keeping them without those great quarterbacks. Where would Alabama be, guys? I mean, they're the talent, but where would they be?
How about this stat? Kirby Smart, as defensive coordinator at Alabama was 4-0 in national championship games. And now that Kirby Smart is with the head coach of Georgia, Alabama 2-3 in the last 5 national titles. Now, with that said, is there a program in the country that would not be happy about the fact that they actually played for 5 national championships in a short period of time? Nobody would deny that. They would love that opportunity. No. But it still speaks volumes about, and it wasn't just his coaching, Kirby Smart. It was also his ability to recruit. Bobby Bowden was always fond of telling me, and I miss him so much. It's hard to believe it's been over a year now since we lost Bobby Bowden. But it wasn't about just recruiting players. He often talked about the recruitment and retention of outstanding coaches. He didn't have a lot of turnover with his coaching staff. No. And he stressed the importance of being able to find and grow these outstanding coaches, but also the ability to keep them as well.
Well, that is the point, and I want Jimmy to expand on this, that you can do it, but when you coach with Nick Saban, everybody then wants the Saban sauce, and they come after you. It's not – Mickey Andrews came to Florida State in, 84, 85, and was there for decades. You think about Ken Donahue, Brother Oliver. Bill Oliver, God love him, might be, in my opinion, he is the greatest defensive coordinator in college football history. I mean, the guy, I would love to get him on this show. I've talked to some people that know him, and I know he lives up in Gunnersville now. He used to live at Lake Martin all the time. But you go back and you look, what's amazing about Nick Saban, and I don't know if Nick Saban goes to all those coaching clinics and all that stuff like that. You got to be careful about relying on people who rely on other people. Jimmy, you see what I'm saying? Like Bill O'Brien. What had it been, 20, 25 years since he called a game, an offensive game? Been a long time. And y'all know what I'm talking about. You go back 6-7 years ago, Alabama would average, 31, 32 points a game. Then all of a sudden it became 45, 48 points a game. They're not getting that extra 10, 14 points in these big games. You look at 2019, they lost to LSU. They gave up 46 in Tuscaloosa. They lost to Auburn on the road. They gave up 48. Okay? That's a big, big deal. And guess who's getting those points now? Georgia and Tennessee. Everybody in the league is coming after Alabama. And that stat you gave, only 4 times the last 176 games has Alabama not taken the field with national championship implications on the line. You think that isn't pressure? The fact that those guys do as well as they do with that pressure tells there's a lot of good things, but I'm saying I bet Nick Saban's going to look deep. He uses Dr. Kevin Elko, sports psychologist. I think he's going to start talking and change. And I just don't see him he's not done. They said it about Coach Bryant in the late 60s with the substitution rule changes and all. And look what he did in the 70s. Watch out. Jimmy?
Well, it doesn't take an Einstein to figure out that this year Alabama doesn't have 3 or 4 NFL players in their wide receiver core.
Yeah.
That's fairly obvious. And again, those guys don't grow on trees. And in this age of NIL, you hear it even from Saban himself when you have these elite recruits coming in for visits. You bring them in at the very end before they go home, and you ask them, well, how was the visit, Coach? It was fantastic, but what's your NIL deal? That question wasn't being asked 5 years ago. And then you've got the transfer portal. You have guys that you brought into your program that were very highly recruited by every major school in the country, and they haven't been getting any playing time. Well, they might wait 1 season, but if you go 2 seasons, they haven't been getting any playing time or aren't major contributors, they're out of there. So you've got to deal with that, and you've got to do recruiting now from among the FBS landscape. And so it's a totally different scenario. And again, when you talk about these coaching staffs that stayed intact for so long, I mean, I don't think any Nebraska assistants left for maybe 20 years, in the late 70s to, until the time Dr. Tom Osborne retired. And you saw that at a lot of schools because the money wasn't what it is now. Now, if you're a hot assistant and you're a coordinator that's having big success, let's say like Dan Lanning, you get a head coaching opportunity, especially at Nike University, Oregon. You're probably starting out at $5 million, going from what you were making as a coordinator. So the times are very different. It's going to be almost impossible to see the bulk of assistant coaching staffs staying together for any length of time.
Johnny, that great points from Jimmy. Hard to argue.
He brought up Nebraska, and I'm going to relate Nebraska to the Auburn situation now with their vacancy as far as heading up the football program. One of the problems that the Nebraska's the world, and I think Tennessee did it as well. It's almost like you get these coaches either who understand the past and want to forget it because they understand the expectations are so high, or worse, they have no idea about a tradition for a program. I think one of the biggest mistakes Bush Jones made, and as far as them Tennessee hiring Bush Jones, is that it was almost like he didn't embrace the tradition. He had no understanding that Tennessee actually was a very successful football program in the history of college football. And you get that going on. And then like in Nebraska,
John,
here's somebody that
hold those thoughts for just a minute. We're going to take a quick break. I want you to come back because you're on a roll and you're making great points. And Sidelines with you after this quick break.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Caught off guard there. Johnny Ballpark, Frank, you are on a roll. Keep rolling.
Well, I was just going to say, like in Nebraska, it's almost like they never won national championships. They never were, never a program on the national level in the sense that they didn't want the old guys back. They didn't want to embrace the Heisman winners. It is almost like let's just forget about all this greatness that we had and let's just start new. And that's a big problem that Auburn is facing right now. I've been in contact with players, and not African-American players. I'm talking about white players from the 70s. And everybody who understands college football in the South in the 60s and 70s understand that it wasn't necessarily a welcome place for African-Americans to show up. So with that said, there's white players that want Cadillac Williams to get this job going back decades. And I bring it up because you don't have an Auburn man as the AD. He was born in Tuscaloosa, and John Cohen. His experience as a player and as an athlete and as an AD was at Mississippi State. And so I wonder how many people secretly, because they want Lane Kiffin. Let's just don't make any mistake about it. They want Lane Kiffin. I really truly believe the reports that it is close, that they could easily make an announcement as soon as the Egg Bowl is played this year. They're almost wanting Cadillac Williams to lose on Saturday against Western Kentucky, so it will become a moot point. And by the way, if for Auburn fans thinking that this is a cakewalk on Saturday, Western Kentucky is not a typical, let's pay you $1 million and we buy the W. There's a reason why there's only a 5.5-point spread with Auburn favored against Western Kentucky on Saturday. But there's parts of me that really is concerned that they kind of hope Cadillac Williams falls flat this weekend so he can eliminate himself from contention for this head coaching vacancy. Because I'm telling you right now, there's players that go back decades. African-American, white players. It doesn't matter the color of your skin because, and as well as I do, the biggest challenge for any head coach for a college football program, you have to be a leader, and secondly, you have to be able to recruit. The X's and O's part can take care of itself. You hire an outstanding offensive and defensive coordinators. If you're Auburn, you can pay that person between $1.5 and $2 million. And Cadillac can surround himself with experienced coaches, the X and O's guys. But as far as enthusiasm is concerned, Cadillac Williams has that it factor. And if you don't notice that, then you're just in complete denial. I think if you're Auburn, you want Cadillac to beat Western Kentucky on Saturday. You want him to have an impressive showing against Alabama. You don't have to win the game, but at least be a strong representative on the field with players not showing quit, and hand the reins over to Cadillac Williams.
Well, I got a text from an interesting text here from Yule Gibbons in Montgomery. Said Auburn people have got to be careful about loving people just because they went to Auburn. Cadillac is loved by Auburn. He loves Auburn, but his lack of coaching experience, only 4 years, is that going to hurt him? Well, this is what I say. And I said this to Mitch Davis in the first segment. He's not being, used by Auburn, paraded as a mascot, whatever. He genuinely loves and gets Auburn. He is the kind of guy, if he were the head coach, would go out and be able to bring in, because they would have the money to do it, assistants. But if he's the head coach, you want him hands-on. He's a people person. Cadillac is genuine. He's real. When asked about team awards this week, he said, we're not doing that. Too much individuality, too much NIL talk now. I want to focus on this team. He's saying the right things, not just because he's been told to say them, because that's what he believes. So let's say this. There's a lot of buzz about Lane Kiffin. I'll believe it when I see it. I live in Memphis. Jimmy Sexton, what he's famous for is getting everybody a Christmas pay raise. Okay. He puts all of his clients out there and he plays them off each other. Now, one of my Ole Miss friends told me last night, Browne, he said, why would he not take the Auburn job? He goes, I don't think he's coming. He goes, y'all could guarantee him 10 years, $100 million. If Auburn makes that mistake and gives up all their leverage, AKA Notre Dame with Charlie Weiss, Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, they're fools. When are they ever going to learn the lesson about giving up all your leverage on the front end? You could get a guy like Cadillac, make him a 4-year deal, pay him whatever, and say, here's unlimited funding, which they have at Auburn, okay, to go out and hire the best staff anywhere. And you think, how about Cadillac Williams as your head coach, and you go out and get Dell McGee, who played at Auburn, who's the running game coordinator, one of the top recruiters in America, Columbus, Georgia, Baker High School native, or Kendrick. He went to Kendrick. Okay. You bring Dell McGee back as assistant head coach under Cadillac as the running game coordinator. Watch out. You bring in your coaches from the past that know Auburn, that know those high school coaches in Florida and Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi and Tennessee. Johnny, I see where you're going. I don't know if Auburn will do it. I like to have somebody with some experience, but Cadillac,
well, what kind of experience? What kind of experience are we looking at? Dabo Swinney was never an offensive or defensive coordinator. He wasn't a good college football player. He never played in the NFL. You look at an outstanding running back at Auburn in the SEC with Cadillac Williams. Here's somebody with 7 years experience in the NFL. Dabo Swinney didn't have any of that. And you look at the fact that he's been coaching one form or another since 2015. The biggest thing about, and look, I was always included a part of the process when I worked in college athletics because I had passion for the school that I work for. And the biggest thing about recruiting is it's a sales process. Let's just break it down. ABC, always be closing. The sales process is really simple. I could go out and be an outstanding recruiter for Auburn, and I'm not even an Auburn fan, but I could be a great recruiter for Auburn because I understand the tradition. I understand what you're selling, and I can get my enthusiasm for my product, Auburn University, over to the person who I want to receive that message. And that is what Cadillac Williams brings to the table. Brian Harsin failed miserably because he had no closing ability, had no passion, had no love, had no understanding for Auburn. And do you think Lane Kiffin loves Auburn? No, he loves the fact that what's going to be his next vacancy. And I will go back to Lane Kiffin 2009. You know what really turned me off about Lane Kiffin from the start as far as a head coach and as a person in that capacity? I go back to Florida, Tennessee, 2009. Here's Tennessee with an opportunity with a play here, play there, still make a game of it against Florida to win the game. Instead, he wants that score to look close on Sunday. So when you pick up the papers, when you hear the final score, if you weren't paying attention to the game, you see Florida, which was a national championship team as far as in that capacity, as far as they were the reigning national champs, they win 24-10 against Tennessee. That's what Lane Kiffin is selling. Lane Kiffin is selling himself. He doesn't care about Auburn. He never will care about Auburn. And Auburn folks need to understand that.
Well, here's my take on it. Auburn people expect and demand that their coach loves and embraces Auburn. Arkansas people, they love Sam Pittman because he loves and embraces what they have at Arkansas. And they've got several more recruiting classes to go, but they have a culture there of people that love it. Kirby Smart, this year that this team is built on guys they recruited. And we were asking that yesterday to Jordan Hill, who covers the Dogs for us. He said, that's not necessarily something he hangs his hat on. He just said that's just how it worked out. But you're right. The thing about Cadillac is, I know 7 years in the NFL, number 5 pick in the draft, NFC Rookie of the Year with Tampa Bay, tough as nails, incredible recruiter. He would surround himself with like-minded people, people that are high achievers in life. Okay, you don't get where he got unless you're internally motivated or going to surround themselves with other people. But you talk about a guy that is as real as it gets, Cadillac, that you can't fake this, man. You can't write this in Hollywood.
Well,
this is genuine, real deal. And now, is that good enough to be a head coach? Hell, who knows? I mean, maybe that's what happens. My thing on Kiffin is he's getting a pay raise, and I think he stays in Oxford. I do not see him coming to Auburn.
Well, with Cadillac Williams, you also get 50-plus years of players who suited up in those Auburn uniforms rallying behind him. How many coaches has Auburn hired that had that? They didn't have it with Gene Chizik. They didn't have it with Gus Malzahn. They certainly didn't have it with Brian Harsin. I mean, you go back. They didn't have it with Tommy Tuberville. I mean, they would have that many decades of experience representing Auburn, rallying behind Cadillac Williams. It would be the first coach, I'm thinking, in my life, and you have to go back to the Shug Jordan days, and maybe even Pat Dye for that matter, the last time Auburn has had a head coach where you had that many decades of experience rallying behind.
Yeah, and that over 100 former Auburn players were down on the sidelines the other day, and you saw it. It looked like a Billy Graham tent revival on Friday night, man. I mean, but again, is that enough? I don't know. But I again, knowing, and I don't know Jimmy Sexton, but you watch how he operates. Look what he did with Kiffin to Arkansas, and then he pops up at Ole Miss. Arkansas thought they had him. Watch out.
Jimmy, have you ever met him, by the way? Have you ever had any run-ins with Jimmy Sexton? Because I have. An interesting individual, and he's not all about Jimmy Sexton, and that's why he's successful in the fact that he has all these coaches and assistant coaches and coordinators in his stable. The fact that he doesn't want the notoriety. He's not a narcissistic guy because he's fully aware who he is and what he's able to do.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, he's amazing. I mean,
Well, he's got a suite at Neyland Stadium, right?
Yeah, he may have a suite at every stadium across the country.
Yeah, but he's a Tennessee.
Or access to a suite.
Know that. Yeah, exactly. He can have access to anything he wants. But as I observe this situation from a distance, my first thought, especially when you consider the two different contract extensions to Gus, including the $49 million snap in which LSU snapped the ball a quarter of a second late on what appeared to be a game-winning touchdown pass at Jordan Hare, and that was the old-time World Championship Wrestling loser leaves town. Had they gotten the snap off, Gus would have been gone the next day. Instead, it was less, and you just never know how things are going to turn out. But I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for. I think Auburn would be in a much better situation if they were located in the state of Mississippi, where state law only allows you to offer 4-year contracts with maybe a 1-year option, where you don't get stuck into these 10-year cesspools, when you find out 2 or 3 years in, this isn't the right guy. And now you're where A&M is with Jimbo Fisher,
Jimmy, you nailed it.
Well, how about the fact that before Cadillac Williams even emerged in this situation, what was the name out there that was not Hugh Freeze and that was not Lane Kiffin? It was the one and only primetime Deion Sanders, who, by the way, how about the fact that he gets annoyed if you don't call him Coach? Coach Prime, Coach Sanders or something. Last time I checked, because he made the excuse that, well, Nick Saban, you don't call Nick, and I go, well, he likes to be called Nick. So stop with that nonsense. But tell me, what is so impressive about Deion Sanders' resume, who has only been a head coach since 2020 at Jackson State? There's no heavy lights. There's no national television. Nobody paying attention to the decisions you're making every play like it is in the SEC. To me, if you're going to consider Deion Sanders, then why are you not considering your own guy in Cadillac Williams?
Well, bottom line, nobody knows that, but I think you're right, Jimmy. When are these schools going to learn if you make a 10-year deal? If that's what Auburn does, that's stupid. And they'll say, well, that's what you've got to do. No, you don't.
I don't think Auburn has to.
Yeah, they don't have to do that. You know what? You make him here's what you do. You make it a 4 or 5 year deal. And if he doesn't like that, you don't take him. But you better get the right guy. Auburn has everything you need. There's about a dozen schools. Go back in the last 50, 60 years. 12, 15 schools that win these national championships. But you got a chance to do it every year there. But anyway, hey, Johnny, we've run out of time. We got Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com trying to get in with us right now. But unbelievable stuff. We got to get you back on. You need to start being on the round table with us. But tell people how they can follow you. You put out a lot of incredible content, and man, go Noles.
Hey, I appreciate it. In fact, Rivalry Week on Monday. You can listen to my show if you're in the Huntsville, North Alabama area every Monday, 5 to 7 afternoon drive. You can also listen online at umpsports.com, plus download the phone app at umpsports. You can also follow me on Twitter at BP Frank Show, and also on Facebook, Johnny Ballpark Frank Show. I got a great show lined up on Monday. I'll be visiting with Bill Newton, Mr. Punt Bama Punt Guy. Yeah, he was the guy that blocked the 2 punts. It's the 50th anniversary of that famous win in 1972. Also, I'll have General Pete Dawkins, one of my favorite Heisman Trophy winners ever. He'll be a part of the show and more. But always an enjoyable time for me to spend time with both of you guys. Have a great rest of the week.
Hey, absolutely, man. I'm going to be listening to that, man. General Pete Dawkins. Hey, you ain't going to get that anywhere but with Johnny Ballpark Frank. Yeah,
he's a cool dude. Thank you.
All right, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Jimmy Hodge, you better be listening to that. General Dawkins. That will be cool. You know what? Lou Holtz was speaking with Paul Feinbaum, was interviewing him, question and answer up on the stage at the CoachSafely.org banquet back in late August at Vestavia Hills Country Club. Lou Holtz said, you know, these kids today versus when I was coming up, because when I was playing football as a kid, you know, I cut my finger one time in practice. It was bleeding. I went over to my coach and said, look at my finger. And he goes, hey, son, I was in Iwo Jima 5 years ago. Get back on the field. You know, we need more of that. I mean, this is crazy. But Jimmy, you were talking about it, the 10-year deals. We got about a minute before we go to the break, and Franz Beard will be joining us. I do not like them. Do you think anybody's listening out there to the fans going, please don't do a 10-year deal? Or they just, you got to do it. That's what you got to do. I think it's foolish.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can only go by history, and it just seems like, despite the fact that Auburn has now just short of 2 years, has forked over $36.75 million to pay 2 guys not to coach anymore. And you hear all this talk about Lane Kiffin and the 2 Malzahn extensions. And I mean, it's just hard for me to come to any other conclusion that they just don't know any other way. I mean, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if, they made a 10-year offer to Kiffin, but we've also talked to the Ole Miss
people. Let's take a quick break here. Hold that thought, because we got to take a quick break. Franz Beard, Gatorbait Media, is going to join us on the other side.
Now more than ever, it is so important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
Big Sam. Okay, Rob Browne back here. Jimmy Hodge and I joined now by the Iron Duke, Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com. And Jimmy sent me a text. I think it was Jimmy and or Frank, Doug, Maury maybe, during that Florida beatdown of South Carolina Saturday. The Gators are playing pretty darn good football. You betcha. That's what they say up in the Midwest and South Dakota. Darn tootin', you betcha. What do you think about it there? Don't you know? Gators finishing up, looking like they're getting better. What's going on down there? They look like a different team. I don't care who they're playing. They're all on the same page.
Well, I hate to pin a revival on one act of dismissal, but since Brenton Cox Jr. is no longer on the team, for some reason we can play defense, and he was our most talented defensive guy. So, Billy tries to put it at this. He says, better people make better football players. He says that, the message of being better in every phase of your life is finally going in, clicking between the ears. And he thinks that we have enough physical talent to win ball games. Now, we don't have as much physical talent as Georgia. We don't have as much as Alabama. I'd say Tennessee probably has more physical talent than Florida. They certainly have more speed, that's for sure. But Florida's young. Florida is probably the youngest team in the SEC, believe it or not. We only have 4 seniors. Now, we got guys graduating who are not seniors, but we only have 4, one of whom has been dismissed. So we only have 3 seniors on the team. We have some walk-ons. We have some guys that have been around a while that are graduating, and they all got their senior day, which was wonderful. Everybody comes down, gets hugged by the coach, gets to hug their mom and dad, gets to take flowers to their mama, get their picture taken. You guys know the drill. And then you go out after that, and we have a beatdown of South Carolina that was as thorough a game as the Gators. That was as thorough a game on both sides of the ball that the Gators have played, I think, since they beat Auburn in 2019. I mean, we've had games where we played really well offensively or whatever like that. But I'm talking about on football and on the offensive defensive side of the ball. That was the best game we've played since Auburn 2019. I mean, just really, really good football.
Yeah.
Some special teams were a disaster, but I guess into every life a little rain must fall.
Well, I mean, Coach Jimmy Hodge and I were talking about that. I just think that Billy Napier, he's methodical. He's very, very disciplined in what he does. He doesn't get rattled. You don't see him over there pulling his hair out on the sidelines. I mean, I like him. I think he's a hell of a coach.
I think he's going to do very, very well at the University of Florida. And I think that he has approach that can sustain. Dan Mullen had 3 extraordinary years, but he was like a bottle rocket, and he goes up in the air, and then he fizzles. Yeah. By the way, he's tremendous in the studio with ESPN. He's like Urban. Urban's the best there is in the studio. I mean, if you want to get entertained and get the giggles, then you watch Game Day. If you want to actually learn something about football, you watch the show on Fox, because Urban, particularly when by himself, is terrific. And then they throw him in with these segments with Brady Quinn, and the two of them are I don't know. There's just a natural chemistry there, how they play off each other with really intelligent thoughts. I mean, Desmond Howard giggles all the time. Okay. David Pollock, he does his very best to act like he knows what he's doing, but by golly, he cannot hide the fact that he is Georgia through and through. And that's, if it's all about Georgia, he knows about it. If it isn't about Georgia, he doesn't. McAfee tries to be, Desmond part 2, and Herbie's not bad, but Urban blows him away. And, but they giggle a lot. And you go on the other stage where they have the Fox. And by gosh, you get Urban, you get Brady Quinn. Reggie Bush is surprisingly insightful and continues to get better. And Linehart's really good. Linehardt needs to be the next, they need to put him in on CBS with Gary Danielson.
There you go.
Put him in there, because he would be a really great game analyst. Boy, my mind is talking. My mind is saying things, and my lips ain't doing it.
Well, let me ask you this one. My wife Audrey is a huge Urban Meyer fan. So am I. I think guy's a hell of a coach. You've spent time around him, and I mean, Jimmy, jump into this one, but he's incredible to watch. The guy's mind, his brain, go from Utah, you go to Florida, and then to Ohio State. And, look, he didn't leave on a good note at Florida, and he didn't leave on a good note at Ohio State, but I think the guy's one of the elite coaches. He's got 3 national championships. I don't care what you say about – look, what people do off the field, if we put a camera on every one of us in this country. God only knows. I don't think any of us would hire anybody. Jimmy?
Yeah, well, you talk about the Fox shows. Chris Peterson is also really good. And what I like about him is that he is really quarterback knowledgeable. You know, he was an offensive coordinator at Boise State before he got the job there. And then, of course, he took Washington to the playoff. And when you hear him talk, you know, you don't get a lot of coaches that have worked exclusively with quarterbacks. And when he analyzes teams, you know, he really brings a unique perspective, and he does it in a way in which you're comfortable listening to him. You know, you don't feel like it's this over authoritarian type of message, you know, you're getting from him. You know, it's like you're just having a casual conversation. But yeah, Fox has they've got a good team of talent there for sure.
Yeah. Franz, you look at the SEC right now, and Tony Barnhart yesterday made that point. You know, if you're a Tennessee fan, you have to pull for Georgia. You know, you want Georgia to win the SEC. Tennessee, you want your team to win out. Georgia wins the SEC at 13-0, and Tennessee would be 11-1. They both go to the playoff. But then I say that Michigan and Ohio State. Your thoughts about that Big Ten narrative? The Minders have squeezed those teams in there, and then there's TCU. If TCU goes undefeated, I think they're in. If they have one loss, and then there's LSU. If they don't win the SEC, they're not in. But man, LSU's coming on strong. But kind of break down that top four right now. What you think you see happen?
I'm going to give you a scenario that I think that they're cringing in the studios at ABC, ESPN, Disney about. Okay, Georgia runs the table. Ohio State beats Michigan. TCU loses. We wind up with who are our final four? We have two from the Big Ten and we have two from the SEC. I think that if you want to know what my scenario is that I think is going to happen, I think that's what's going to happen. TCU can run the table. It's going to be very difficult for them. And they're begging for that because, you get the Texas market and all up through the Midwest with that to go with hooked in with the Ohio State Michigan winner. They'd love to have a team further west, but you look at the resumes. The best team on the left coast is Utah. They will prove it this week because they are going to stomp Oregon, and they're going to win the Pac-12. They've already beaten Southern Cal. I think Southern Cal is very vulnerable in these last two ball games. I think UCLA has the kind of game that can beat them. Now, does UCLA show up? Because they certainly got torched by Arizona last week. And with that quarterback who transferred in from Wazoo, Jed Fish is doing a tremendous job there, by the way. But you look at that, and I think that in the ideal situation for the networks, you get Georgia, you get Michigan, Ohio State winner, you get Tennessee, and you get TCU. That would be their ideal, because everybody then will say, well, gee, Georgia has to play Tennessee on a neutral field for a championship, probably. Or I could see Georgia as Tennessee as the number 4. And then you get a Georgia Tennessee rematch in the semifinal. Oh my goodness. But the realistic scenario to me is that we wind up with 2 from the Big Ten, 2 from the SEC, and everybody's saying, can we get a 12-team playoff in 2023? We're begging for one. hear you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Hey, we back there, Nick. You got me now?
We got
Yep.
you. Make your case for that one. You heard what Franz Beard, the Iron Duke, just said. Can you argue for or against it? And what about TCU? If they get left out, again, I hate to say this. I mean, I'm not a TCU fan. I have nothing against them, but that's going to make the case even louder. The screams for us to go to a 12-team playoff. And man, look at the excitement we're having right now. But Jimmy, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Franz and I couldn't hear you for the first 45 seconds. So when you said respond to that, I'm guessing you're Franz's
about his top
thoughts
four,
on the top one. The loser of Ohio State, Michigan, I just don't see any way they're in. I mean, their strength of schedule is just going to kill them. I mean, you've had up to this point, Ohio State's played one ranked team, Penn State. And that Penn State offense made Ohio State's ballyhoo defense that supposedly had improved so much look extremely ordinary. In the opening game, they had to hang on to beat Notre Dame in the season opener at the Shoe. And the very next week, Notre Dame returns home and loses to Marshall. I think this Michigan Ohio State's going to be a tremendous game, though, because in addition to their running game, and I'm telling you what, Michigan just pounded Ohio State with that running game. And I think McCarthy is the best quarterback they've had there in a while. And he can provide a passing game. I think Michigan's got a great chance to win in the game. But whoever loses, like I said, I think their strength of schedule is just going to knock them out. And Tennessee's basic, obstacle is if LSU wins out, because a 2-loss SEC champion, I don't know how you keep them out, because you're going to have victories against both Georgia and Alabama, and that's going to be tough to overcome. What I think would be the absolute nightmare for the network executives would be for Tennessee, Georgia, and LSU to all be in, even though you could easily argue once the dust settles that they were 3 out of the best 4 teams, but it's not going to happen just because of the overwhelming political tsunami that would have to be overcome to do that. But if you're Tennessee, though, I mean, they have victories over 5 ranked teams, and your only loss is on the road at Georgia. How many teams in that field would have a road victory at Georgia, so and how many of those teams would even be talked about for playoff contention if they've been playing in the SEC this year? But we know that isn't going to happen, and it doesn't matter, but it's still an interesting, thought to consider for sure. So again, we're just going to have to wait for it to play out. But TCU, I saw them against Texas on Saturday, and I tell you what, I thought they were going to lose to Texas and at Baylor this coming Saturday. And I tell you what, they were impressive. If they're 13-0, they are going to be in.
All right, Franz, we got a couple of minutes. Tell people real quick before we go how they can follow you.
GatorbaitMedia.com. We have daily articles there, and we have an online magazine comes out every Friday that I think is very, very good. I think it's probably as good an online magazine as you're going to find.
Yeah.
By the way, when I came on, I was listening to Jimmy talk about Ole Miss and Lane. I'm going to tell you something. Lane Kiffin, the only thing that will lure Lane Kiffin to Auburn is this: 10 years. They're going to have to offer him that, because the state of Mississippi has a law that says nobody can have more than a 4-year contract. And if Lane, the money is not going to be the relevant factor here. It's going to be the length of the contract that would do it. Now, if Lane says no, Hugh Freeze, I think, has already told him, no, thank you. Deion Sanders is there, and Deion Sanders, I'm telling you what, would be a lightning rod for Auburn. And I know Auburn people. I thought one of my best friends is a former president of the National Alumni Association of Auburn.
Yeah.
And he says, we can't do that. I said, why? He said, because he's FSU. But, here's the other scenario for you, and I'll throw it out before we go because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Mike Norvell leaves for Arizona State. Deion Sanders becomes the head football coach at Florida State.
Hey, look, I like Mike Norvell. I could see Mike Norvell to Auburn. I watched him build Memphis on another level. So I think that you hear one group of people is telling you Kiffin, another group's telling you Freeze. I think the 10-year deal is crazy. I think that'd be dangerous. Look, we ran out of time, guys. This is unbelievable discussion. Everybody, great show. Again, go out and help somebody with expectation of getting nothing in return. Go out. Remember, we're most often going to see the least among us in the face of Christ. And remember, you live in the greatest country in the world. Sidelines here with you 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 2 hours every day. Go to our website, sidelines.live. And look, some point in your life, you're going to need an attorney. Check out our good friends, Haygood, Pierce, Thompson, Short, and Cleveland in Auburn. They've been the law since 1959. Give them a call. Check them out on our website. They're great people to work with. I know them. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a great day. We are out of here.